It was December 19th, 2025, a night that the world of boxing had circled, argued about, mocked, and secretly anticipated for months. Under the bright lights of London's O2 Arena, an unlikely pairing stood on opposite ends of destiny. On one side, Anthony Joshua, a two-time heavyweight champion, the embodiment of discipline, sculpted through years of Olympic precision and professional pedigree. On the other, Jake Paul, the YouTuber-turned boxer who had made it his mission to blur the line between spectacle and sport. For years, his critics had called him a sideshow. But by 2025, Jake had done the impossible, forcing the world to take him, at least partially, seriously. From the first moment the two stepped into the ring, the contrast was striking. Joshua was stoic, still as stone, his 6 feet 6 inches frame casting a shadow that could swallow the ring. Paul, slightly smaller but broader than ever, wore that familiar smirk, the same one that had carried him from social media chaos to sold-out arenas. The crowd was a strange mix, half in disbelief, half electrified by the absurdity of it all. Yet, when the bell rang, the laughter died. The noise melted into anticipation. For all the hype, for all the memes, they were about to see what happened when new money met old legacy. Joshua's jab came like a metronome, precise and patient. He wasn't here for a circus. He was here to make a statement that boxing still belonged to the craftsmen, not the entertainers. But Jake Paul had spent years preparing for exactly this type of night. He wasn't swinging wildly anymore. He moved with calculation, his head slipping just enough to avoid Joshua's opening probes. Each round began to feel less like a mismatch and more like an experiment. How long could Jake survive against one of the sport's most respected names? By round 2, Joshua's rhythm took shape. He stalked Paul methodically, throwing thudding shots to the body, testing how much punishment this YouTube boxer could really take. Jake absorbed them with grit, but his counters were sharp looping overhands that carried more intent than most expected. One even caught Joshua flush on the cheek, drawing gasps from the crowd. It wasn't enough to hurt the former champion, but it was enough to earn respect. For the first time that night, Joshua nodded. A small, almost imperceptible gesture, the kind a veteran gives when he realizes the kid in front of him actually came to fight. As the rounds unfolded, the tone shifted. Commentators began to drop the sarcasm. Jake Paul, for all his brashness, was proving something deeper. He had stamina, composure, and a strategy. He was no longer the outsider begging to be accepted. He was now the disruptor demanding to be acknowledged. Joshua, meanwhile, was navigating unfamiliar territory. He was the bigger man, the more skilled boxer. But he was also the older lion in a jungle that seemed to be changing faster than anyone anticipated by the middle rounds. The 5th and 6th, the air in the arena grew heavier. Every punch felt symbolic. Joshua's power shots landed cleaner now, each one echoing through the canvas. Jake's face began to show signs of the storm, swelling near the eye. The redness of a fighter who'd never faced this kind of pressure before. Yet every time Joshua seemed close to breaking him, Paul responded with something unexpected. A crisp combination, a body feint. A flash of resilience that made the impossible seem briefly possible. And that was Jake Paul's greatest weapon, not his power. Not his fame, but his refusal to quit under scrutiny, because he'd lived in the eye of chaos for years. Every mistake he made was public, every triumph questioned, every step of his boxing journey ridiculed. By 2025, he wasn't just fighting Anthony Joshua, he was fighting the world's collective doubt. In the 7th, Joshua's precision became surgical. He cornered Paul, working behind the jab, setting up the right hand like a sniper sighting, and then it came a crushing right cross that sent Jake reeling into the ropes. The crowd erupted, sensing the end. But instead of crumbling, Jake clinched, regrouped, and somehow stayed upright. The bell rang, and Joshua walked back to his corner, shaking his head. He'd hit the man clean textbook, and Paul was still standing. It wasn't dominance anymore. It was endurance versus legacy. Round 8 began with an unexpected twist. Jake Paul, blood trickling from a cut near his eye, came out swinging. He landed a left hook that snapped Joshua's head back, not enough to drop him, but enough to remind the crowd that this wasn't a scripted exhibition. Joshua responded with a grin and fired back, their punches colliding midair like thunderclaps. For 30 seconds, the ring became chaos, two different worlds colliding under blinding lights, pride and pain mingling in every exchange. As round 9 arrived, both men were exhausted, their chests heaving, their gloves heavy. Joshua knew he'd outboxed Paul, but he hadn't broken him. And for a man like Joshua, that was unsettling. He'd faced champions, knockouts, Olympic gold medalists, yet here was a YouTuber refusing to fold. Jake, meanwhile, had no illusions of victory by points. He needed a moment, a single miracle, something to make the night unforgettable. He stalked Joshua, feinting left, dipping low, and uncorked a looping right hand that grazed Joshua's jaw. The crowd gasped again. For a split second, Joshua stumbled. It wasn't a knockdown, but it was enough to make everyone realize this wasn't just about who could punch harder. It was about who could believe deeper. The final round was pure theater. Joshua, breathing deeply, went back to fundamentals: jabs, movement, composure. Paul chased, desperate to leave one more mark before time ran out. They traded again, each exchange slower but heavier, as though the ring itself was dragging them down. When the final bell sounded, the two men stood inches apart, drenched in sweat, eyes locked. No trash talk, no posing, just mutual exhaustion and a strange, unexpected respect. As the announcer stepped forward with the cards, the tension was electric. The crowd had seen enough to know who technically won. Joshua had controlled the fight, dictated the pace, and landed the cleaner shots. But in another sense, Jake Paul had won something less tangible yet equally real. He had crossed the invisible line between novelty and legitimacy. He'd walked through fire and proved that, for all his flash and controversy, his heart for combat was real. The decision came, unanimous, for Anthony Joshua. No surprise there. The arena erupted with applause, and Joshua raised his hand in quiet triumph. But as Jake Paul lifted his glove too, something remarkable happened. The crowd didn't boo. They cheered. The same audience that once dismissed him as a clown now recognized a fighter. He had lost the bout. He had earned what money couldn't buy: respect from the fight world. In the post-fight interview, Joshua spoke first, voice steady and humble. "He came to fight," he said, nodding toward Paul. "He's got guts. A lot of people wouldn't step in here with me." He did. Jake, still bloodied but smiling, replied with the grin that had defined his career. "I told you all I'm not here to play pretend. I'm here to fight legends." The crowd roared again, not for mockery this time, but admiration. It wasn't the night of an upset. It was the night a bridge was built between two worlds that had once seemed irreconcilable. In the days that followed, analysts debated the fight endlessly. Purists insisted it was nothing more than a publicity stunt. Others admitted that, stunt or not, Jake Paul had done what few thought possible: last multiple rounds with one of boxing's best, without looking completely outclassed. Joshua's camp praised his professionalism, while Paul's team spoke about a rematch that might never come. But in the court of public opinion, the verdict was clear. Jake Paul had changed the conversation once again. This wasn't the end of Jake Paul's story, nor was it the defining moment of Joshua's career. But on that December night, under the cold glare of the O2 lights, both men had shared something rarer: honesty. Stripped of spectacle, stripped of fame, it came down to will. Joshua showed why he was still among the sports elite. And Jake Paul showed that no amount of doubt could stop someone willing to be hit and keep moving forward. In the brutal honesty of boxing, it's all that truly matters. As the lights dimmed and the crowd filtered out into the London night, the echoes of that final bell lingered. The world hadn't witnessed a war for titles or rankings. They'd seen a collision of eras, of cultures, of dreams. And in the aftermath, one truth rang louder than the punches themselves: respect in boxing isn't given. It's earned the hard way, one round at a time. If you'd watched this fight unfold, what would you think? Was Jake Paul's journey proof that dedication can overcome doubt, or just another chapter in boxing's ongoing spectacle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy deep dives into the drama behind modern boxing's biggest moments, Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that bring the fight to life, one bell at a time. In the world of boxing, there are moments that defy logic, moments that blur the line between sport and spectacle, forcing even the purists to stop and stare. December 19th, 2025 was one of those nights. The O2 Arena in London had seen legends rise and fall, but never had it hosted an event quite like this. On one side stood Anthony Joshua, the man who had once carried the weight of Britain's boxing hopes, a two-time heavyweight champion whose discipline and poise made him a global icon. On the other side was Jake Paul, the internet rebel turned fighter. His career had been as controversial as it was captivating. Nobody believed this fight would ever actually happen.